All right, today we're going to learn the last thing we're going to learn for quadrilaterals, and we're going to learn about special parallelograms. So again, remember a parallelogram, you know that opposite sides are congruent and parallel. So this is congruent to this side. This side is congruent to this side, and they're parallel to each other, right? Both opposite sides are parallel. So two here and two here, okay? So PQRS is a parallelogram. Find each measure. So RS is a side length, and we know that it's x plus 3, and it's going to equal 2x. So you're just going to do 2x equals x plus 3. Subtract x, x equals 3. So now I know x is 3, so I got to plug it in, and I should get 3 plus 3, which equals 6. For the measure of angle S, well, the measure of angle x, S, plus the measure of angle R, so S plus R is going to equal 180. So that's 18N equals 180. So N equals 10. So the measure of angle S equals 100 degrees. And therefore the measure of angle R would just be 8 times 10, which is 80 degrees. All right, down here you want to find each measure. Well, now we're talking about diagonals. And so I know that this diagonal is congruent to this diagonal, and this diagonal is congruent to this one. So I want to find Vx, that's that whole length. So first I have to figure out what n is. So n plus 7 equals 3n. So then I'm going to subtract 1n, and I get 2n equals 7, and then I divide, so n equals 3.5. And then I got to plug it in. 3.5 plus 7 is 10.5. So this part is 10.5. And this part is 10.5. So 10.5 plus 10.5 is 21. Then if I want to find x to z, well, that's 10.5. Now I want z to w. This one actually we're not going to be able to do because we don't have enough information to answer those questions yet. So you can cross off 12 and 13. It refers to another postulate that we didn't learn. All right, let's move forward. Hopefully that's a good review of that. All right, so now we have special cases of parallelogram. So remember, the big umbrella that we're talking about are four-sided figures, which we call quadrilaterals. And then quadrilaterals can be broken down. It's kind of like kingdom, phylum, species. In science class, it's the same thing in math, except we're doing it with shapes instead of animals, right? So we start with quadrilaterals, then we break it down to parallelograms. And parallelograms can be broken down even further into rectangles, which are special because they have 4 congruent angles, but then they also follow the same basic requirements for parallelograms, right? We have a rhombus, which is special because it has 4 equal sides, but the angles aren't, opposite angles are congruent, just like a parallelogram, right? And then we have a square, and the square is special because it has both 4 equal sides and 4 equal angles. So this is what we would call a regular quadrilateral. This is the square, okay? And so what you can do is you can go to this Math is Fun website, and you can click on it, and it'll tell you some amazing things about rectangles. And it also gives you extra practice, because, again, the hard thing is going to be to practice. And then you want to kind of read over this, right? And you can kind of, you can play with a rectangle, you can make different shapes, and you can see what happens. You can see what happens with the angles and the sides. When you do that, if you did the sides, you would notice that, oh look, the sides never, opposite sides are always congruent, and you can look at the diagonals and see what happens there. It gives you some formulas, and down at the bottom, questions that you can answer to practice. So you want to go to this website, the link is in Canvas, and take some notes on rectangles. Okay. So an example, I'll go ahead and do this for an example. An example would be characteristics. They have equal diagonals. So that basically means that this and this and this and this are all the same. The opposite sides are congruent. And they have 90-degree angles. So all that has been marked on the drawing. So that's special about a rectangle. So you'll notice the main thing that's different about the rectangle is the 90-degree angles and the sides. Okay, and then you can do the same thing with rhombus and square. So you're going to want to go back to Canvas, click on those links, and then take notes and do the practice problems within Math is Fun. All right, then you're going to want to create 4 flashcards with the following key characteristics, and you want to memorize that. If you need note cards, I have some in the front of my room, or you can just take a piece of paper and cut it into 4 equal parts. You want to make sure you make a picture and correctly label your cards and the diagonals. Very similar to what we did here. Okay, and then for the rest of your classwork, you're going to decide whether each paragraph is a rhombus, rectangle, or square. So for example, this one here, I know this is going to be a rectangle. And I know that because of the 90-degree angles. Down here, you're going to use the special characteristics of a rhombus to find the measure of the, so all of these are rhombus. So you're just going to look at your rhombus notes to fill these in. And so what I know about my rhombus notes is that if this is 54 degrees, so is this, and so is this, because the diagonals bisect the angles. Okay, so this one's also 54 degrees. And then I also know that this angle and this angle are congruent. Well, these are isosceles triangles. So 54 plus 54, that's 108. So 180 minus 108 is 72. And then this angle here is going to be 72, and this angle here is going to be 72. So you're going to work your way around what a rhombus is to figure out that missing work there. And then you can do the same thing for a rectangle. Now remember, with a rectangle, you know that all of the diagonals are congruent to each other. So to figure out what x is, you would use the equal sign in the middle. 5x minus 15 equals 3x plus 9. So I would add 15 over here and subtract 3x over here. So 2x equals 24, which means x equals 12. All right. And then you want to go back and look at the question. It says for what value of x? So they're just looking for x in that case. Okay, be careful with number 9. Please remember this whole angle. You have to add in another 2x. So this whole angle here is actually 4x minus 2 for the whole angle. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. And same over here. If this angle is 7x plus 3, this one's also 7x plus 3. Okay. You also have extra practice. So you're going to want to complete the packet to get all the practice in as possible, because really the hard part is remembering the special characteristics of each of these 3 special types of parallelograms and how to set up your equations. Your test is tomorrow. On your test will be parallelograms, rhombus, rectangle, and square, as well as interior and exterior angles, okay, of polygons. You can do these IXLs. Well, you have to do these IXLs for a grade and also to help you practice. All right. Go ahead and stay tuned. I'm going to go over the review sheet, at this time. Hopefully I can get it done in one video, but it's not. It might not be possible, so I might have to do a second video. So complete each statement with sometimes, never, or always. Squares are always. They're regular polygons, and even more specifically, they're regular quadrilaterals. Rhombuses are always quadrilaterals, because remember, quadrilaterals is the big blanket, and then everything else falls underneath. So quadrilaterals are only sometimes parallelograms. Other types of quadrilaterals that are not are the trapezoid and the kite. All right, so you're going to use this quadrilateral ABC to determine which statement is true and justify your answer. So we want to note is CBE equal to ADE? CBE, is it congruent to ADE? Well, a couple things. First of all, it told me that it's a quadrilateral, okay, and it told me that AC is equal to B to D, and they intersect. Nope, it didn't tell me they're equal. It told me that these lines are parallel, okay? So what can we say about that? Well, if they're parallel, we can say that this angle and this angle are congruent. And we can say that this angle here are congruent. And we can say that this angle here and this angle here are congruent. And we also know that this side here are congruent, and this side here and this side here are congruent. So that's all the stuff I can mark up. So if you look on here, there's several ways that you can prove that these two triangles are congruent. I'm going to use angle, side, angle. Okay. Let's move on to the second question. It says CBE, so CBE again. And this time we're going to see if it's congruent to ABE. So that's here. Well, first of all, I know this side's congruent, right? I know that this and this are going to bisect each other. Really, that's all I can say. So this one's no. You cannot prove that those two are congruent. All right, and then the last one is CDE. And CBE. Okay. Again, I know that this angle and this angle are congruent, but that's not helping me out. I know these sides are congruent, and I know these sides are congruent, but I don't have an angle. So there's nothing I can do on this that states whether or not they're congruent. I know this angle and this angle are congruent, and this one and this one. This one, so yeah, this one's a no again. Now, if they told me this was a rhombus or a square, that'd be a different story. But they didn't. They just said quadrilateral. Okay. So there's not enough information for you to. All right. So now we're given this rectangle MRS, and we want to know if MO is congruent to PO. All right. We want to use a two-column or paragraph proof to show that triangle ROS is isosceles. So we know MO is equal to PO, and it's a rectangle, right? So if we know MO is equal to PO, well then we know that SO is equal to them as well, because they're it's a rectangle, and it told me that. And then I know that this angle here is going to be congruent to this angle here. And so now I've got side angle side to prove that the two triangles are congruent. So therefore, I can say that all parts are congruent. And now I can say that ROS is an isosceles triangle because it has two congruent angles. Okay. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll do the rest of the review sheet in the next video.